Today we want to spend just a few moments talking together about syntax. Syntax has to do with the ordering of words in sentences for a particular language. And it's actually drawn from a Greek word that means to order together. And we think about English, we have a common word order that helps make sense, and it begins with a subject and then a verb and then followed by the object. This is the general syntactical order for English. However, it's different in other languages. In Japanese, it's the subject followed by the object and the verb concludes it. To give you an example of what we mean, if you listen to an ordinary English sentence, if English is your primary language, you know when it's syntactically properly ordered, and you can also pick up when it's ordered in a perhaps different or funny sounding way to you. And a good example of this, if you've seen any of the Star Wars movies with Yoda, anytime he speaks, he puts things in a somewhat unusual order, and it is obvious to the ear that this is not ordinary English syntax when he talks about, I don't know, if he were to talk about getting a sandwich at the lunchroom, he wouldn't put it in the proper order. I need to think of an example here that he might say, to lunchroom I am going, instead of I am going to the lunchroom. So he would put what we would normally put at the end at the beginning. And anyway, syntax has to do with the ordering of words given a particular language for good communication. And put English up here so we know what we're talking about. And this is Japanese. It's just examples. And syntax actually dictates grammar. So syntax then has to do with the ordering of words in a sentence for a particular language. Now when we talk about English syntactical rules, they dictate the order words are going to be placed in a sentence so that the sentence makes sense and it creates actual meaning. You just don't put words up generically and hope that someone gets what you're talking about. And then there's convention involved in that as well. Sometimes you can put it out of order and it still makes sense with the Yoda example, but you know that it's out of order and it still sounds unusual. And so part of it is rules, part of it is convention, what we're used to. So in English we would say, I like him, not I him like. Now if you heard I him like, you would probably understand it because it's such a short sentence. However, you would realize that's definitely not the way we normally speak. You would do the subject I, verb like, object him. We do this naturally for our native language. If English is our native language, we grew up speaking it, and so it's very common. However, if we are trying to learn a new language, it becomes a little more difficult because it has a different syntax, different rules. For example, when I studied Japanese in college, it was hard to listen for the end of a sentence to understand the action that was being taken, to have to listen all the way to the end to get the verb. I was used to getting it early, so I understood the subject, and then I was like, okay, now it's acting on the object, but what's the verb? And it took a lot of time to get that. Something that's related to English, but yet somewhat different, would be Spanish, where ordinarily in English, adjectives come before the noun, but in Spanish, they follow the noun. And it's these sorts of rules that you have to learn, the syntactical rules, so that you can learn the grammar, so that you can then speak fluently in that language in a way that would correspond to the way native speakers speak that language. So syntax, once again, from a Greek word meaning to bring things together, to bring them together. So how do we bring a language together? How do we bring the words together in a particular way that creates meaning for that language? And it has to do with the ordering together or the word order of sentences in English. So in English, subject, verb, object, or in Japanese, subject, object, verb, or whatever languages you're trying to learn, you have to learn the syntactical order of the words before you learn the grammar rules. They're sort of the building blocks of the language, the foundation, the bottom floor, and you have to start there if you're going to learn anything else beyond that. And it makes learning other languages somewhat difficult when you've grown up learning a particular syntax to try to learn a new one. Anyway, we've thought a little bit today about syntax, what it means, what it looks like with a few examples, and I hope you'll remember the Yoda example as when you listen to those phrases he says and those sentences he says from the movies as an example of strange syntax for English. Hope that's been helpful today.